let's talk about what you guys want to talk about. We're going to start off with questions from our Locked On Cougars insider group here. There's a great question that came in here, and it comes from Gary. He says this. He simply asks, LES. And what he says is there any idea if there's any talk of fixing it up? Do you think it makes more sense to spend big bucks on overhauling it, to add on more luxury boxes, chairback seats, etc., or build a brand new stadium across the street in terms of the future for LaVell Edwards Stadium? Gary, I'll just say this. The moves that BYU has made of late with the stadium indicate to me that they are going to ride it out for the foreseeable future. Some of you may have seen that they have torn out some of the seats in some of the corporate sponsor areas at LaVell Edwards Stadium, putting in seats where you have tables you can watch the game from. The lower west side, those chairback seats down the lower west side of the field, they've actually torn out the first row and have put up essentially a railing with tables there for fans. And I have it on very good authority that those have been going out to some of the high rollers when it comes to the NIL collective stuff with the Royal Blue Collective for BYU boosters. So the indication to me is that BYU is not planning on renovating, overhauling, tearing down LES, at least in the near future. My personal opinion on the matter is they need to do something and do it in the relatively near future, because I've said this before on the podcast. My dad likes to point it out. My dad was born the same year that the first footings were poured for what is now LaVell Edwards Stadium. Think about that. That's 60 plus years old. We have just seen Kansas, which had an older stadium than BYU that absolutely needed the renovations. They tore the entire thing down and they're rebuilding it. They're spending an entire year not playing in Lawrence, Kansas. They'll be playing games in Kansas City, both at Arrowhead Stadium as well as Children's Mercy Park, which is the home of Sporting Kansas City in Major League Soccer. I don't know necessarily if there's a good plan for that for BYU outside of BYU deciding to go and build a new LES while they play simultaneously in the current LES. Now, where would you build that? Well, there's this campus over there at Provo, the old Provo High campus, that in theory I think would be the place to do it. But I think we're already seeing that there's indications what the future Provo High campus is, because they just announced that medical school that BYU plans to build. Where are you going to put that? So essentially, you're going to take half of the land on that and build a medical campus and also a BYU football stadium. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but maybe, just maybe, you build the football stadium, build a new athletics campus on the Provo High campus, and tell the medical school, as soon as we're done with the new football stadium, you guys are going over there where the old LES was. That's a personal opinion. I have no insider intel on that. I've also mentioned this in the past on the podcast as well. It is going to cost conservatively multiple billions with a B to build a new state-of-the-art football stadium. I'm just speaking frankly. And the way to get the funding for that is either you save up a lot of pennies, and BYU probably has plenty in reserve, but maybe not billions in the BYU athletic coffers. You get the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You tell them, hey, we're going to build a stadium similar to what we've seen with the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. Many of you probably have seen this. Their football field is natural grass, but they play in a dome. Well, they roll the grass out during the off period when they're not playing games out into the parking lot and let it grow in the sun. But when they play the game, they roll it in. The theory is that you make LaVell Edwards Stadium, the future LES, you make it a dome stadium. You make it a church building, for lack of a better term. It's like a regional conference center that just so happens to host BYU football games. There's the running joke, and trust me, I know people who work at BYU, that there are a lot of people out there that think that the Marriott Center is simply a basketball facility that has church meetings in it. It's in fact the opposite, folks. The Marriott Center is considered to be a church building that just so happens to have basketball games played in it from time to time. That is the delineation. If you want the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to pony up a bunch of money, and we all know that they've got quite a bit of money, according to some of the reports out there, if you want them to invest in it, well, you declare it a church building and just so happens to host football games and has this little grass field that's growing outside of it from time to time. I'm not saying that's the plan. I'd like to see it happen. That's a personal opinion. I think that's the perfect way to go about it. But take of that what you will. It's like, and let me be clear one more time. Do not go and say that to your friends that Jake is telling me that people inside BYU are saying this. I'm just saying that people I know that would have more of an idea on this are saying that that could be the way it is approached from the BYU side of things. Now, you'd have to get the church to sign off on it. That's the other thing about this. So there's a lot of different things that would go into that to make it a reality. But it's fun to kind of talk about that and consider what it could be. All right, other questions coming in here. I've spent a lot of time on that one. Tyson asked this: in the spirit of high school football season, which, by the way, last night, an incredible game with Tim Few and Skyridge, I think there's conservatively 10 different guys in that game that were Division I athletes, and the Pula brothers, Keenan and Jaron Pula from Timpview High School. BYU's got offers out to both of those guys. They're in the vaunted 2026 recruiting class. Based on what I saw last night, BYU do very, very well to sign both of those brothers because they were absolutely lights out in that game. That's just the small smattering. You have Gennaro Guilford Jr., who's playing for Skyridge. Keneal Sweetwine, the quarterback for Skyridge, is a high-level athlete. Darius Alfalava, who's already committed to Oklahoma. Deshaun Toilolo. There was so many guys in those games. But Tyson asked this: in the spirit of high school football season starting this week, what local, current, and future BYU recruits are you most excited to track this fall? I'm just going to say, to answer your question in general, all of them. Now, I'm going to let you guys in a little secret. I'm going to be at the Westlake game tonight. Westlake is hosting Weber. Well, it just so happens there are two BYU recruits playing in that game. Tyler Payne, a linebacker for the Weber Warriors, and also Sali Fano, a pass rusher extraordinaire from the Westlake Thunder. I have hopes to get out there and talk to both of them after the game and have those conversations for you guys on next week's editions of the podcast. That's where I'm going to be. If you're out at Westlake, hit me up. I'd love to chat with you guys. We'll be on the sideline down there, and would love to have a chat with you guys and talk about it. All right, other questions here. I have a question to add from Robert here. Last year, my view was that we were playing better D at first and second down than giving up big plays on third down. Not sure the stats show how often teams got first down on first and second versus third. Any thoughts on that? I know that the perception is that, Robert, and you're right. There were a lot of big plays given up on third down when BYU felt like they could get a chance to get off the field. But the bigger point to be made is BYU failed too often on first down, where even though they were at third down, the down and distances, the metrics say that they were more apt to convert those third downs because of the success on first and second down. Yeah, there were multiple times. I remember BYU had teams in a third and decent situation, and the team got out of it because BYU's lack of a pass rush, inability to stop the run, whatever it might have been, killed them. But I think it was across the board. They just struggled at all levels, and the health status of a bunch of guys didn't help BYU in that circumstance. Next one, Bryce, what do you expect BYU's record to be after the first 3 games? Who poses a larger challenge between Wyoming and SMU? Right now, considering Wyoming star running back Harrison Whaley is out for the foreseeable future because he has to have a scope of his right knee, SMU is the bigger danger team to me. Now, I would have said SMU regardless, I think, in reality, because it's a new Power 5 team who's recruited very, very well. They use the transfer portal to great effect. Speaking of the Ponies, and having to go down there, which will be their first ever Power 5 versus Power 5 matchup when BYU goes down to SMU to Gerald Ford Stadium. Is it Gerald Ford? I think it is. But looking forward to that. But I do think SMU is the better of the two there. But I'm predicting BYU's record at worst to be 2-1. If BYU's 1-2, and I'm saying that SIU, I'm giving BYU Southern Illinois a win, which is, by the way, Southern Illinois ranked 11th in the preseason FCS poll for what it's worth. But I'm predicting BYU to be 2-1 coming out of the non-conference slate. I'd like to see them 3-0, because if they're 3-0, that would go a long way to helping BYU have a chance to really make a good run very quickly towards bowl eligibility, but we'll see what happens. Carter asked this, super not exciting question. That's kind of a funny qualifier there, but it looked like today was the first day BYU practiced in the royal blue helmets that they'll wear against Southern Illinois. I could have just not noticed. Am I correct for seeing that? You're correct for seeing that, because they actually pointed it out on social media. They were breaking in the royal blue helmets in practice. Now, the royal blue contrasting with the navy blue uniforms, the practice uniforms, was a weird look, but you got to wear the helmets to break them in, and BYU did that. So, yeah, that answers your question, Carter. They actually said it themselves that they were breaking those in. Andy asked this, more of a comment here. I'm feeling optimistic about the linebacker room. I saw a video from the video department put out, and the linebacking core looked like they were going to be a room full of pit bulls this season. Looking forward to seeing those guys balling out. Sidebar, Jack Kelly is built like a tank. Dude, you're right, Andy. The Jack Kelly hype machine, it's been pretty crazy out there, quite literally, but he very much looks the part. I don't necessarily think that there is a Ben Bywater type player in the linebacking core, but I think the sum total of the parts of linebacker this year is far better than it was a year ago. Yes, you lose Ben Bywater, and he was the heart and soul of this BYU defense, and you cannot replace him, but I'm telling you, the total amount of linebackers, the talent, the development of those guys in that linebacking room going into this season, they're going to be better as a unit overall than they were a year ago, even with guys like Ben Bywater, like, who am I thinking of? AJ Vongpachon, as well as Max Tooley. Those are very, very good linebackers, but those are 3 guys. I think this year BYU's got conservatively 6, maybe 8 guys that could match their production. That's why I'm with you on this. I do think the linebacking core is actually very, very good. Jesse asked this here. You briefly addressed some of the recruiting losses like Aaron Dunn. I know that we are in some other linemen, but it seems like we are a step behind in all recruiting in the state of Utah. Why is that? And what can we do to change it? We shouldn't have lost Smith Soden. We shouldn't have lost Rock Olson. We haven't offered Gennaro Guilford Jr. We need to stop losing these legacy kids and start pulling in some more high-end talent. Feel free to paraphrase. I actually read it straight up. So, Jesse, yes, they have lost some guys. For the life of me, I don't understand why Rock Olson was not offered by BYU. He was offered by Utah State, where he's currently committed to. He was offered by Utah, and his dad, speaking of hands, who's a dear friend and a coworker of mine at the KSL Sports Zone, they didn't offer Rock. I don't know what to tell you on that. Gennaro Guilford Jr. just got his first offer. It comes from, nope, not BYU, the University of Utah. Smith Snowden felt the love from Utah more than they did from BYU after his dad, speaking of Will Snowden, was a running back for BYU. The legacy prospects are absolutely important for BYU to lock down. I don't know why they're losing out on them. I hope they get Austin Pay. I sincerely hope after losing out on Aaron Dunn and hoping to get Siosua Vete to commit, you got to get guys like Austin Pay to commit to this program. His dad, both of his brothers have played for BYU. That is a BYU family. You got to reel him in. I don't know, Jesse, why they haven't done better on this. There needs to be, by the way, and I hear me say this diatribe all the time, more investment on the recruiting side of things. I just saw a post just the other day from BYU saying they're looking for student assistants to help out their recruiting efforts. Okay, having BYU students help out with recruiting efforts is one thing. But when other Division I programs who are not Power 4 programs have more full-time recruiting staffers than you have, speaking of BYU, G5 programs, I'm just alluding to this because I know it's a fact. It's going to me that BYU, the next thing they need to invest in is more recruiting personnel. Speaking of just full-time, their job is literally to send the love out to these BYU recruits. That's a very, very underrated thing, especially in this day and age. And it would help, I think it would go a long way to helping BYU retain some of that talent and win some of those battles that you're talking about, Jesse. That's just a personal opinion on the matter because my opinion doesn't count for much anymore, it feels like, when it comes to that.